Well, good morning, everybody. I'm going to start this video off a little differently, just with geography here. I want to start off in Australia because over the last week or so, we saw a sizable heat wave that came in to this section of Australia. When I mean sizable, we were watching temperatures all the way along even the southern coast here, well above 100 degrees Fahrenheit, some places getting up to 110, 115 degrees. Now with that, it was extremely dry. The only place that's been very wet has been up here farther to the north into parts of Queensland, especially as we're going to be watching the development of a tropical system here in the middle of summer for them. But I want to show you something. If we kind of zoom in down here into parts of New South Wales and Victoria, we can see this was just a good satellite view on the 9th, some of the bushfires that are down here. And these fires have been, just raging right up into this area. Now, if you don't know your geography of this region, this is all kind of highlands here, surrounded by a lot of trees and shrubs and grasslands. And then a lot of the agricultural region in this part of Australia is in this part of New South Wales and Victoria. So there's a couple of big rivers that run through here that a lot of this ag is based upon. But these fires are just huge when you look at the smoke. And I was kind of just going back and forth over a few days here, looking at when these fires really got going. And the smoke from them has been quite impressive as it spreads across this part of the world. Now, just thinking about it, I want to show you, this is just what the temperatures look like, yesterday's highs, if you will. And while we've had a wind that has come in off the, from the south, cooling things down here, farther into the interior, the outback, as it's commonly called, the temperatures are still, look at the numbers, 109, 112 degrees Fahrenheit, still extremely hot. And in terms of summer temperatures, it does get this hot, but just watch these temperatures crank again throughout this week. Now remember, when you're thinking about big population centers, I'm talking about the biggest ones, we're kind of here, and then we're in this area, right? So you got to be kind of east and south of that line, or south and west of this one. So this is a lot in the interior where there is not a lot of agriculture, but here along the south, thankfully, the temperatures have backed off somewhat. I do want to show you something since we're just talking about, let's flip this over to precipitation totals. And we are watching here a tropical system that could be putting down just a tremendous amount of rainfall. But the interior is going to stay extremely dry going forward. But some of these places up here picking up 5 to 8 inches of rainfall with the current setup, just delivering all that tropical moisture. Now, this is a major part of our forecast story. All right, now let me just take you over there real quick. What we're looking at is basically the transition of the MJO. That's it. That's that deep convection. And I want to talk about this because we consider this to be phase 4. Right about here is phase 5, which means we're close to phase 6. And we need to see what phase 6 is going to mean for North American weather, which is what my main focus is on these forecast videos. But real quick, Matt and I were talking with some of our colleagues last week, and we're just kind of comparing geographies around the world in terms of their agricultural productivity and their size. And if you've never seen it before, that's what it looks like if you overlay the United States on top of Australia. It's a massive, massive continent. And I just want to make that point very clear here as you have a look at this. Okay, next, let's go have a look at what's going on in South America, specifically Brazil. So I went in and got the latest NDVI data, and I've just chosen all of their major agriculturally producing states. Okay, that doesn't mean we don't do this here, but this would be the vast majority of it. And I want to point out that right now, when you compare it to the previous 2 years NDVI values, right now 2025 into 2026, which is this red line, is now setting the new benchmark, the new high. And again, we've made cases that even despite some local rain deficits, it's not been enough to be widespread enough to cause major crop losses throughout much of Brazil. I will show you, though, the last 10 days, it's been pretty dry in this part of Mato Grosso, and that is a very productive part of Mato Grosso. But over the last month, these stats really kind of give you the different case. We've had rainfall in the last month. In fact, if you even look at the most recent 30-day map, even though these values, look at this down here, this is well below normal. Below normal is still quite a bit of precipitation in this region. I've had a concern, I brought it up last week, that down here into parts of Buenos Aires, getting over toward, Cordoba has been a bit drier as well, yet we're not fully seeing there being a huge problem there. It is drier this week down there, and drier in southern Brazil going into the next couple of weeks, but rainfall is expected to move back from Minas Gerais through parts of Goiás into Mato Grosso here as well. Now, harvest efforts are going on, and they're going to continue to spread mostly from north to south. That's a general direction by which we start to see the harvest progress take shape. But late January into February is a huge time period for getting those soybeans out. So we're going to continue to watch this, especially if there's too much rain in places. That can often be a major problem with trying to get a crop out. Now, the models are not fully in agreement about these next 2 weeks, but overall, because stress is low across much of Brazil and Argentina in terms of its aerial extent of there being problems, I don't think it's going to be something that's going to shift markets around in any sort of significant way. By the way, just since I did this a minute ago, where was that True Size Up website? Have a look at how big Brazil's growing area is. I mean, it's enormous. And just to make a point here, just because I have a lot of North American viewers, I just want you to see the size of this. Now, we don't include Alaska. Okay, if you put Alaska in there, then of course the United States is larger than Brazil in land area. But if you look at just the continental United States, there you go. Just a number to think about here. We do know that Brazil probably has another 40 to 50 million acres of land that could be readily gone into production. In terms of total arable land, there could be something, several multipliers above what's still left to go into production, which is one of their biggest advantages globally in the production of grains and many other things. All right, so just wanted to show you that here to kind of get us started. Okay, where were we? Here, then there. Let's talk about Northern Hemisphere snowpack. So the latest data we've got from Rutgers is on January 10th. And what you see here is snow coverage. It's kind of interesting to take note of this area and through here, which has been at times very mild, very windy, although we did add some snow down here into parts of Texas, Colorado, Kansas. We'll talk about that in just a second. But I really wanted to show you the chart departure because of how much snow we've had in parts of Europe as of late. You can see much above average, a positive anomaly in that particular region. And the snow extent at times has gotten pretty far south into parts of China as well. And what's going to happen is over the coming weeks and months, as we watch the snow extent evolve, especially into late winter, it sometimes gives us a clue as to where we could be positioning the coldest air across the Northern Hemisphere. But again, right now, it does have a relationship. It's important to know that it does, but I would say that there are other factors that are in much bigger control of what's going on. Now, you do take note that right here coming out into the southern plains, we've got this positive anomaly, and you can actually see it on satellite. From the second system late last week, there it is, there's the snow. But with yesterday's kind of warmer temperatures in this area, we did see some of that snow melting, and that's just kind of just an important point to see. But honestly, the rest of this whole region is snow-free. We do have better snow here across parts, especially in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and that's going to be an area that's going to add quite a bit more. We're going to ask a question later in this video as to whether or not we could get some snow down south with the size of the trough that's expected to dip there. Last week, we looked at what was going on in the west. We spent some time in the Sierra Nevada. We talked about how California's water resources are about 129% of average, and we've seen the size of the Sierra snowpack. But overall, for the next couple of weeks, it's going to go quite dry in the west. Now, the snow that's in the central U.S. will likely melt pretty quickly this week. These are today's high temperatures, and we get into tomorrow. So when we start to see these highs, we're gonna erode that snow pretty quickly. Again, another hot for this time of year, right into parts of, Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota, and parts of South Dakota. I was thinking about Sioux Falls. I just have some friends I was talking to yesterday there, and 52 is the high on Tuesday, according to the National Digital Forecast Database. Now, what you'll notice is by Thursday, a system comes through and drops these temperatures off. And there's going to be a theme with recurring shots at colder air, brief but recurring shots at colder air coming through this region. So that's Thursday getting into Friday. Okay, these are high temperatures. Look, another one coming through on Saturday. And we're going to talk about how much snow we might be able to get out of this. And you know that we were watching the 17th and the 18th for something to brew down here. It was in the models last week. We got to get in there and have a closer look at what that might look like now. Because the overall pattern looks something like this for the next 15 days. There's that sizable ridge that's been in the west. We see that some of the models, like the AI, are trying to just build this into the Northeast Pacific, Gulf of Alaska. And that's what's going to reinforce some sort of Hudson troughing, which means flow that's going to do something like this. So if there's a spot in the country that's going to have access to colder air as we progress through the middle and then into the third week of January, it's going to be right in through here where I just circled. Now, if this trough could get down farther south and this ridge lived up here in part of Canada, then all I'd be talking about is nonstop nor'easters ripping up the East Coast. But as it stands with this overall pattern, our next 2 weeks, I think, is summarized pretty well by the European model. Okay, the presence of that ridge has got a lot of the west dry. Because there is no southwest flow coming through this in the near term, no big cyclones moving through the midsection of the country. It's just a whole lot of that. And as a result, we see some pretty dry conditions when compared to historical averages. And that's concerning. And it's concerning for several reasons. Last week, okay, we had two systems. They moved pretty fast. Their main precipitation regions, well, I should draw that a little more accurately. We're kind of right in through these two areas. We had the dry slots that came in the middle. There were some strong to severe storms and very heavy rainfall in southern Mississippi, getting over to parts of Alabama and northern Georgia. But as well predicted by the models, Florida, Georgia, North and South Carolina missed. And the northern plains were missed. And a lot of Texas was missed by these storm systems. And what was left coming through the northwest, including northern California, well, this is about out. We're about to be done with this. And the southwest is going to go over drier in this forecast as well. Even with the rain that came through, take a look. It really didn't change the statistics since the start of meteorological winter. We just saw a little bit better, improvement in this area and some improvement in that area. But where that dry slot came through, you can continue to see that we're near record dryness in terms of the start of a winter on record. And that's just going to continue to be front of mind, I think, for quite some time until we start to get some sort of southwest jet stream flow. And if that occurs, then we rip off systems through New Mexico and Colorado. They slow down, they draw in moisture from the Gulf, and we'll hit it hard. We need to have that happen by spring. It's got to get in there by spring. Mississippi River is still low, 3 feet below low stage here, and so many of the other rivers and tributaries in this region are drying up. I also don't want to ignore the fact that how dry it's been in parts of Florida as well. I mean, some places down here are having a top 5, top 10 driest start to any winter as well. Okay, from there, just wanted to point something out. In fact, let's just zoom in first on the south central U.S., just so you can see the last 30 days in terms of departures here. And again, we erase these deficits in this area with very brief and heavy rainfall. But what happens with that? It often hits so hard and comes through so fast on the storms that it runs off. We don't get to keep a lot of this in the soil as much as we want. And we go from there, the south central U.S. to the southeast, again, just to point out some of these deficits across key geographies here in the United States. All right, with that, where are we standing here? It's about 5:20 this morning. We've got some issues. We have some lake effect issues coming off of Ontario here. It's quite cold down in southern Georgia. Again, another day of very strong winds coming off of the mountains in Montana. It's a very stagnant air that is over here, like near Boise, or all the way through parts of southern and central, and even up along the kind of the Willamette Valley here, with stagnant air in Oregon. I went looking at it this morning, and I pulled up, I think this is Medford right here, and I want to show you just how stagnant it is, okay? So this line I'm going to draw first for you is tracing out the vertical temperature profile. And this would be the vertical dew point temperature. So the one on the left tells us the moisture, the one on the right tells us the temperature. And when they separate, that's incredibly dry air, all right? So this is called a temperature inversion. It is significantly warmer, about a half mile above our heads out here, than it is near the ground. And this is just a massive trapping inversion, keeping very, very light winds, nothing to mix out any sort of stagnant air. So you'll be able to see layers in the atmosphere because of this. Or it might be a smokestack that puts up smoke and it just hits a layer and goes straight sideways. That's what we're talking about going on in this area. And it's the same over toward Boise as well, although they had a little bit better of a low-level mixed layer. That's where these two lines here take on this shape. I can teach you more about that in summer. That's an important feature in summer thunderstorm development. But look, you can see how dry the mid to low layers are in the atmosphere. Okay, I'm going to take you back over to the new site I'm working on. Actually, I'm going to keep using it so I can release it publicly. All the other maps are still on ag weather, but I mentioned wind, so let's just talk about it. Take a look at this. As we play forward maximum wind gusts, we're already through Wednesday into Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I want to take you all the way out to early next week. Let's just pause this on Monday, midday Monday. Now, to start things off, I mean, there are very strong winds we just saw coming down through parts of Montana. These gusts right along the mountains here. And again, I'm using a low-resolution model. This is the European. I mean, compared to the NAM or the HER, it's still being able to pick up wind gusts 80 to maybe 90 miles an hour. And then as you saw, we're watching later this week for very strong winds to be moving through parts of the plains. So these are 50 to 60 mile an hour gusts, some places a bit higher than that, stretching from parts of the Dakotas into sections of Nebraska. So we do need to be prepared for that. But the real story for me, if I can zoom out farther, is watch these winds in the upper levels of the atmosphere. So this is now jet stream level winds. And this is fascinating. I'm going to turn off the labels real quick because we don't need those for this graph. Here we go. Take a look at this. Look at that ridge out west. Now again, this is the 14th, 15th, 16th. I mean, now you understand the map projection makes this look much bigger than it is in reality, but it is still a huge western U.S. ridge. So there's going to be cold air anchored here, dry, warm air anchored there. And in between, we're going to drop some pretty chilly air as we approach the end of this week into this region, including more lake effect snow. And it also includes possibility of getting some snow much farther down to the south. I'm going to tell you more about that in a second. But look at this. This is just, man. Now, when I say northwest flow versus southwest, look at this. I would like to see that coming from here. Man, if we had that, it would be an entirely different winter. Of course it would be, but I mean, I'm just telling you. But as it stands, look at this split. There is a low here, but the ridge that's north of it, that high over low block, that's impressive as we work our way through much of this week. Now, let's go down and just have a look at what the model is projecting. We're going to keep it on the ECMWF here for precipitation type and intensity. We'll kind of zoom in here a little closer into the United States. And as we play it forward, okay, got a little clipper coming through Tuesday through parts of Ontario getting into the Great Lakes. As we play it after that, that system rolls east, front dives farther to the south, bringing some rain and some mountain snow here to the Appalachians. There will be snow on the back side of this, throughout the day on Wednesday, including some lake effect. But as you noted, from the 14th into the 15th and 16th, this was the storm system that we were going to watch to see if it could dig far enough to the south to kick off a coastal low. And now you can see all the cold air that it's going to be bringing in and the snow, while nothing is happening in the west in terms of significant precipitation. And that system brings in snow showers, snow squalls I'm expecting as well, more lake effect. And watch this, the 17th, that's Saturday, into Sunday and Monday, the model is attempting to pull a system here. This is really more of a Sunday feature than a Monday. In fact, this is Sunday night as you look at it here. And it's trying to drop some snow down there. It's not a whole lot, but some. I'm talking about down here from Oklahoma into Louisiana, the south and southeast. It's not a lot, but it's attempting to drop some snow into that area. Now let's go ahead and have a quick look at it. How much snow are we talking about here? So let's just add it up in the model. There we go. All right. So we'll pause this out here by Friday. So you can see some relatively light snow. Remember, I don't flip over to blue until 4 inches, so we could watch some lake effect coming off of Michigan. This would definitely be a shore parallel band, and then here into the northeast. But then you note that once we get into the weekend, we're adding more, and there it is. Let's watch this. This is Saturday morning through Sunday morning, and I'm keeping an eye on what's going on down there to the south. That's it. Now, the entire time frame, not adding anything for the next 7, 8, maybe 9 days into the western United States. No systems coming on because of that ridge. But the lake effect through the next 10 to 12 days could be quite impressive. It's just going to be the orientation of those lake effect bands. It's all going to be determined by the direction of these winds because we still have a lot of ice-free area on the Great Lakes. So this is what we're keeping an eye on. And in terms of total precipitation, let's just go have a quick look at that. We'll do precipitation anomalies next. But this is the latest European model forecast on total precip. And I'm going to go ahead and throw the numbers back on there. Let's take the place labels off. Just look at this. I mean, there is the chance. This is 15 days out. I shouldn't have gone that far. Just take, I don't know. Let's go all the way out there to the 24th. How about that? Because at that point, I still think it's going to be a while before we get something coming in the west. But you can take note of how dry the model is across a broad section of the U.S. that's been so dry we've been talking about. We will watch this. Again, when's the timing of that? Let's pull this off of here. Mostly through the next week, we just have the chance of very light precipitation. There's a front that comes through later this week, and then this weekend, we have to watch out for the chance for some snow here. But then if you note, early next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. See it? Thursday, Friday. And this is way out in the forecast. We cannot bank on this right now. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have shown that. But it is worth, let's just go look at the precip anomalies. I'm going to leave this in a 5-day increment here. So here's your next 5 days, and this is the 5-day sliding window. So we can see some moisture coming into the Great Lakes, and the model's attempting at the end of the forecast time period to revive this region. But overall, the probabilities don't look that great. So let's go look one more time at the snow, because I want you to see in my old static maps here the differences between the European model. So watch, here's Saturday into Sunday. See it? Saturday into Sunday. That's 10 days out in the European, and this is 10 days out in the GFS. So I just want to make a point that other models are not as aggressive on the chances for snow down here. But 10-day GFS, 10-day Euro, the corridors are similar, although the GFS is trying to bring better flow into the Cascades. So let's go look one more time and just talk probability. The chances of getting an inch over the next 10 days. And I just want to make the point down here that these probabilities are very low. But don't be surprised if there are a few snowflakes. That's all. Got to see that. But if you're starting to see Facebook posts on feet of snow and shutting down the entire South, there's very little evidence of that happening. Okay, if that changes throughout the week, we're going to talk about it. But right now, I don't have a lot of evidence building up around that. Let's see here. I probably got a new model run in. Oh, good. I didn't. So that's the chance at 3. Here's the chance at 6. And here's the chance at 12. What a difference for the West. All right, if we come back to the West, I do want to make note of the temperature pattern in the West, and we're going to watch snow depth. What I'm particularly interested in is, while the temperatures go mild underneath this massive ridge, how much snow is melting. We can see out here as we play through the end of this week into next week. Let's watch it again. I'm just going to play it fast. Blur your eyes and just watch. See how there's some, like, shrinks the total area. And that's what happens as that mild air comes in. So we could get some additional flooding, so it's not precipitation, but we're going to get some snow melt that'll come through the region and possibly just add to the water resources of this area. Okay, back to total precip, and let's just have a look at the next 10 days by examining the probability of staying under 1/10 of an inch. And it is a big section under that ridge throughout the western states into the plains. Very, very dry. We're also quite dry in these regions that missed out on last week's rains, here in the coastal Carolinas into Georgia. So under 1/10 of an inch, if you're going to look at who's under 1/2 inch, it's a much more expansive region, because really the only shot in town is this plus a front that tries to sneak through that part of the country. That's it. I mean, it's a very dry pattern when you have such amplified ridges off the west coast of the United States. Where's that ridge going to be 10 days from now? Well, the European model tries to shove it here, but watch. This is day 10. As we just play this out further, it's trying to reintroduce this by late January. So that would say this whole flow pattern is probably not going away permanently, which means there's a spot that's going to be cold here. We're going to be mild and dry there. Nothing is breaking this way. Persistence is probably the wisest forecast metric going out this far. You can see that in our forecast models, right? So they're all, none of them, I should say, are going aggressively after major precipitation regime change except the AI model. Now you're going, wait a minute, what's going on with the GFS? I understand. These models are attempting to bring in that system, but again, it's 280 to 300 hours in the forecast. But man, the AI model is really aggressive, and I think it's important for us just to look why. Here's the pattern we're in through Sunday, okay? But watch what it's trying to do midweek. This would be Tuesday the 20th into the 21st, 22nd. Look at that. See this? Oh, it's going omega here, and it's going to take a trough and try to eject it. And that's what it's doing. And look. Oh, I'm rooting for the AI model because that is southwest flow. There's ridging over the southeast. This opens the Gulf. This produces a system. It goes across the country. We bring rain to some of those driest areas, return cold to the west, return snow to the west, snow to the north. I mean, that's it. You have the trough ejecting over the western mountains. That's the pattern that kicks off the big Colorado low or the Panhandle hooker. This gets us away from just getting clipped like this nonstop. So AI model, you have some work to do to see if this verifies. But that's the differences. Okay, on to temperatures. Let's see here. These are our temperature ranks since the beginning of winter. We're going to call it the start of winter on December 1st. I'm just kind of trying to keep an eye on this because if I mention that persistence is my best guide, well, this is what it's showing. I showed you the daily highs a moment ago, but let's just go out there and look at what it looks like in terms of an ensemble average next 5 days versus day 5 through 10. All right, there it is. That's the reinforcing cold air we talked about, and it is going to drive this all the way down south. That, again, would be the third week of January, right? So this is through the 22nd, so the 17th through the 22nd. And then after that, we kind of go back here again, which we've seen. So what is this? This is clippers, mild farther to the south. And this is becoming a major concern given that this whole region is having its, well, you just saw the stats, its warmest December on record. Its warmest start to winter on record in this region. So it's a lot of the same persistence. The new CPC forecast keeps it there too. Look at the data that they produced. This was the Friday update for January 24th through February 6th. So they're trying to reintroduce flow into the northwest. They're keeping part of the mid-Atlantic back over toward the mid-south wetter. You know, they've got cold air here, but they've gone over drier. But remember, you can still get snow and it be drier than average. So there's some merit to this, especially to this. And I want to kind of make a case as for why. If you look right now, the MJO is being forecast by both the near-term and the extended-term ECMWF to come out into 6, go across 7, come through 8, and try to sweep through phases 1 and 2. What would be very compelling in the forecast, this would be game-changing in terms of the pattern, is if it does this, and then it follows these more extreme outliers through phases 1 into phase 2. And the reason I say that is because phase 6 this time of year, guess what? Western Ridge. Phase 7 this time of year, we talked about this last week, Western Ridge or ridge that's just off the coast. This is kind of that by day 10 where that cold air comes through. Very, very well linked to the MJO. That's why I started you off in Australia, to show you the linkage here. And then this is phase 8. This, again, Western Ridge. So that's why this pattern just wants to keep doing this. Okay, but if the MJO, which is sliding through here, again, this is phase, I meant to write a 6, 7, and 8. See it? See, it's coming right, oh, goodness, Eric. It's coming right over the top of that. The subsidence is also moving here, north of Australia. If we saw MJO returning, in other words, these blue-green colors returning into this area, that would take us back to phase 1, 2. And we need that. That moves the ridge back over toward the Aleutian Islands historically. That develops southwest flow on a ridge that sits off the southeast coast. It gets cold here, and it gets snowy, and it gets storm systems, and it just goes. And then I'm done talking about drought. The question is, just come back to it. Does it do this and collapse and do it again? That's what it's been doing. It's been wanting to stay in this triangle. We've got to get this to sweep out and come around in a big way in order for that pattern to start to shift around. Now, the models, as you can tell, are reluctant to do that. They're not calling for that, which is why when you look out there, okay, watch. That's week 2, day 7 through 14. This is the GFS extended. And what does it do? Brings back in the mild, keeps the cold across this corridor to finish the month. And then again, a big surge of mild into early February. And then it'll probably, once we get out there late, see, it's doing it again. Just dropping the cold air back in. That's just a wash, rinse, repeat pattern that we're seeing with this particular setup. Precipitation-wise, let's look at a 30-day. There we go. That's from the 15th of January to the 15th of February. Unfortunately, it's quite dry in the southeast, drier in the plains, and very dry in the west. Again, the reason why the color contrast is so large is winter is not a wet time period for this area, but it is a wet time period for the west, so that's why the anomalies are so much larger. But could we get more snows into the Great Lakes, northeast? Yep. And could we watch this particular track through sections of the Mid-South? I think that's going to be important to keep an eye on as well. All right. If I wanted to put any hope in this forecast, which you got to do that. It's okay to do that. I can be completely objective, but I'd like to put something into this. If we're going to get anywhere near this, there are at least some global signals that I like. Now, these were made by Victor Cassini. He was looking at the CFS model. That I understand that is an old and stagnant model, but on January 11th when it was run, notice that into early February, global momentum was coming back up, and the global wind oscillation was coming out of the basement and back up. You're going to, again, tell me what this means. Well, if you're south, if you're below that line, this is a lot of big circumglobal ridges. Exactly what I just showed you when we started this video, the big amplified ridge in the west. If you get this back up above here, this is more troughiness. This is more storm systems that move through the flow. And I'd like to see that just to get us something different to finish this winter. So I'm not talking about drought preceding spring, okay? There's another helper with this entire thing, and that is that we continue to see the models forecasting a sizable westerly wind burst across the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And this is another signal that La Niña is on its way out. We talked extensively about it last week, so I won't get back into the details now, but I want you to see the consistency. And we did get a new update from the Climate Prediction Center, and just want to show you their January issued outlook for ENSO, so El Nino and the Southern Oscillation. And they have, look at this, by June, July, August, they have the most dominant mode being El Nino. And so this is this progression we're going to be talking about to determine, based on analogs and based on model support, what maybe risks could be for spring into summer. Now, we went over that a lot last week. We're going to rebuild those ideas this week. But right now, I just want you to kind of get a baseline on what we're thinking through the next 7 to 10 days and beyond. We'll just pick this up again tomorrow with Matt. Have a good one. Thanks.